Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Editor's Note. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and in today's edition, with much pleasure, we are delighted to have Brigadier General in Reserve, Relik Shafir, formerly an Israel Air Force commander, as well as a fighter pilot with many hours of flight and many missions behind you, joining us today and giving us a broad overview of the various challenges that are up ahead. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, General, let's start with a broad overview of the current challenges that Israel is facing. Of course, some say it's a seven-front war, others say it's somewhat more than that, but ultimately Israel faces a multi-front war, and that is something that everybody can agree on. What is the most challenging aspect of dealing with such a multi-dimensional, multi-layered construct of hostile fronts at a time when we are very favorable to the strategic thinking of the ancient Roman approach, where we don't confront more than one front at the same time?
Well, to say that we're at seven fronts at the same time is an over-exaggeration. It's the same front divided into different sectors, geographical sectors, the most dangerous of which was Iran with its proxies, that where the Hezbollah posed a major threat in the northern border more than anything else. The fact that it did not materialize is more luck than wisdom. And what started on October 7th, 23, in the southern front, devastating as it may be, it brought about a destruction of the Iranian web plan to harass Israel into a war of some kind of a war of attrition, paying expensive price, mostly from Hezbollah, who prepared for a raid much bigger than the one that we met with Hamas. And so the fact that we were able to dismantle these webs, the cobwebs, in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Iran, and there are some remnants in Yemen, but basically we're able to change the strategic position and the understanding of the countries that or the belligerent countries, that is an asset that needs a translation into a political and, I would say, diplomatic gains. That is something that is difficult to do in Israel's position at this time, and with the internal politics of Israel and the fact that Israelis are not always aware of the need to transform the military success into success for the country, diplomatic and otherwise.
That is something very apparent. I must say that the majority of my conversations with world leaders and practitioners and officers, they always tell me, Jonathan, Israel has to turn its tactical successes into a strategic victory, and a strategic victory within the essence of what national security actually means for a state. It goes into all facets of society, and that is something that hopefully, I do hope and pray for a successful translation that may really take all the various components that Israel has achieved over the course of those past 2 years, as hard and as costly as it was, the best experience is the one that you learn from. So ultimately, in the Air Force, you have a very vigorous process of lessons learned. Unfortunately, that is not shared by all branches of the military in the same fashion and methods. But nonetheless, let's broaden our spectrum a little bit, because I think it's important to understand the root cause of what you were referring to, the multidimensional war, the web, as you defined it. Karl von Clausewitz, of course, was very much into this web, confronting the web, so to speak, which he spoke on extensively in On War in his book, and I think that it does exemplify the comfortable or the convenience for the IDF, which is very much based on the Karl von Clausewitz philosophy rather than the Baron de Jomini or other philosophers at large. So from that aspect, it was positive. But deepening our understanding, the Iranian adversary, which clearly seeks to eliminate the state of Israel, it says so openly, and it is part of its strategic outlook, views two priorities as its core objectives. As one, ensuring that when we're looking at the Iranian construct, it can deepen its control in neighbors, or in neighboring countries, and also beyond that, but starting with the neighboring countries and the third circle, so to speak, which Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, other places are very much a part of. And then two, pushing back on America's hegemonism, as they put it, which obviously is required in order to bolster that latter part, the former part that I refer to. Now, the counter from America's perspective, which Israel is a part of, is the Abraham Accords, because wherever Israel is, wherever we establish and forge peace and deepen our relations with, the American influence and hegemonism, so to speak, is bolstered. But to what degree does that play a role in your mind in this context, since what we're seeing today is a reality where normalization with the Saudis, which was very realistic 2 years ago, seems somewhat more distant these days?
I think looking at the situation, the way you described it, which where Iran, and let me interject two things about the Iranians that people may not be aware of. We, the Israelis, have been very prominent in setting up the Savak, which is the internal police in Iran, the hated internal police in Iran. And
Pre-1979, before the revolution.
That's right. And after the revolution, the Iranians were very hostile to Israel for that reason. That's one thing. Another thing is that in 1988, after the war with Iraq, Khomeini wrote a letter to his generals and directed them that, yes, we have to end this war. And in fact, they lost the war. They lost more than 1 million people. Both Tehran and Isfahan were bombed weekly.
Obliterated.
And he wrote that Iran must acquire a weapon of leverage. That is the word that he used. Well, at least that's the translation to English. And a weapon of leverage, as we understand it today, and I think obviously that's what they meant, was a nuclear weapon that allows them to dominate the area. And in the mind of the Shia, the Iranians have been Shia only since, I think, the 15th century, but in the mind of the Shia since the 7th century, they are the minority. They are the victims of the majority, and they must defend themselves. And we can see this through their different types of customs And so they see a chance to overtake the Sunni dominance and create their own dominance. And by putting Israel as a target and setting aside the conflict between the Saudis and the Iranians, they were able to garner support not only from the Shia, but also from different governments such as the Syrian one and so on, Iraqis who are half Shias, and create a dominance in the area, thereby pushing a little bit Turkey and alienating the Egyptians. But they were pretty successful until this war started. Now, at the time we're now, this is a time to reverse the turn of events or history, in the sense that the Abraham Accord takes the Sunni countries and the less belligerent countries, gathers them together through the American leadership with Israel. Israel needs to be clever enough to find a way to join back the Abraham Accords and get Saudi Arabia into the game as well. The thorn here and the problem here is the Palestinian issue, that Israeli politicians thought they could neutralize one way or another. Apparently Hamas were able to take the sting out of that idea and put it on the table. And the Israelis, we were not smart enough, to my mind, to understand that you have to make peace with the less belligerent Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority, and we were overtaken by our extreme right, I would say, religious, who thought they could take the whole of the West Bank, and some of them even thought about Gaza, run out the Palestinians, and this will pass. Well, it doesn't pass. And Israel must find a way to work with the Palestinians, the Palestinian Authority, in one way or another, and find a way to improve the life and give hope to the Palestinians, both in the West Bank and in Gaza, because they are not going anywhere.
From a religious perspective, I will try to dissect what we're seeing, because I do agree that there is a complexity here that some of those politicians, to include specifically Ben Gvir and Smotrich, do not understand what they're doing in a sense from a strategic and tactical level. Because while they seek to realize prophecies, biblical prophecies, in today's age, they're pushing for something that from a religious perspective is supposed to be God's timing rather than man's timing. But it's their timing that they're trying to push forward because they want to see it in their lifetime. And this converges with a reality in which it becomes more and more complicated. And it imposes on Israel a scenario. I had last week a conversation with a good friend, very senior in the security and intelligence circles in Europe, very pro-Israeli. He's helped Israel many times over. But he told me, Jonathan, the situation in Israel is turning for the worse, and you better finish the war quickly. I mean, I hope you gain the victory as soon as possible, because if not, Israel will turn into a pariah state. And a nation alone cannot prosper. And, you know, there is a challenge there that we do need to take into account that does not converge with reality. The diktats of certain leaders trying to push forward certain things. But nonetheless, driving things to the strategic once more. When we look at the Iranian failures, And it was a clear Iranian failure to create a scenario in which they could outmaneuver Israel to establish multiple proxies and then choke us, quite literally, because that was their intention. Israel was very much preparing for that. Since 2016, the then commander of Northern Command, Major General at the time, Aviv Kochavi, later Chief of General Staff, he launched the first multi-front exercise in Northern Command to confront Hezbollah, to confront Liwa Zainibiyun, Liwa Faitimiyun, the other Shiite militias in Syria, Iran proper, Hashtashabi from Iraq, maneuvering all the way to Israel's borders, the collapse of Jordan in the process due to Iranian maneuvering, which it was very much fighting for. And the Houthi angle was not necessarily on the table back then, but nonetheless, there were certain developing maneuvers happening there between the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthis in Yemen. But there was a clear understanding, as the Latin goes, visi pacem para bellum, which means when you want to prevent war, prepare for one. Nobody prepared for a Gaza war because nobody believed that to be possible or viable, that they would be so suicidal that they would do what they did on October 7th. What are we to take out of that?
I think they ran a very clever campaign. I'm talking about Hamas, by a very small group of leaders that we know that today, who did not convey their plans outwardly to the lower level of commanders. But they were even sure that, or at least they thought, they would be able to take control of more and more geographical areas or even towns in Israel through that attack. They were watching us closely, and they were feeding us with false information that they were in a dire economical state and are welcoming Israel accepting workers for low wages in Israel while gathering information. Sinwar himself, who spoke fluent Hebrew, and by the way, did not want to get out of jail at the time when Shalit was released, but was kind of forced to, thought that by pacifying Israel on the southern front, while the northern front, there were tensions up north that we remember before the war, and pacifying that area, also creating pressures in the West Bank and withdrawing forces from the border and repeating the same type of exercises that they ran for the last year or so, that did not end, about 6 or 7 times, that did not end in a raid, put Israel to sleep. And therefore, Netanyahu shook off the threat from the south and pacified the military through his, I would say, dominance for so many years as a decision maker. And so the generals who were appointed by him
They're also subject to him.
Slowly but surely took the view that the danger will come from the north, and therefore, and that's what took place. There were a few very low-level NCOs and some officers who understood what was going on, could not have the final proof of what was going to happen, but at least knew what the plans were that were executed according to what the Hamas had planned. But everybody was sure it just can't happen. And so we were fooled. And in a way, the events that took place were not as bad as they could have been.
Sure.
Because Hamas was no band of vagabonds.
Well, General Shafir, one of the 32 generals of Israel, told me after October 7th that if the Palestinian terror groups were not so unruly and undisciplined, and were possibly less inclined to murder and rape and pillage, they may have reached Jerusalem. And if they would have reached Jerusalem on that Saturday morning when everything was so quiet and it's only a 45-minute drive from where they reached to, they could have planted one flag with Hamas in the so-called Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa Mosque, what they call it. And that would have been a cry for jihad that may have steered a lot more than what we saw post-October 7th, even though it was quite frantic, to say the least. 1,200 murdered and 4,800 wounded is something that obviously is unfathomable in today's context. But nonetheless, those type of events still take place, including in southern Syria by the new regime in Damascus and Sudan. I mean, those type of events happen on a weekly basis pretty much. So,
by the way, you open the Bible and you read about the type of wars and the type of management and directives that the kings at the time of Israel and Judea dealt with themselves and others. Complete ISIS.
Right. Well, different times, to say the least.
Yes. Well, apparently ISIS is not so much a different time. These are tribes.
Right, but we evolved since.
We evolved since, that's true.
Right, in
But
understanding
ISIS
the situation.
didn't evolve that much from those.
No, ISIS did not evolve, and we do also have, countries that have not evolved since, and that's an understatement.
Well, remember that Syria and the other countries did not go through a European emancipation in the 19th century that made them nation states with the understanding of how to work as a nation.
Right, in the Westphalian sense. I mean, Westphalia, the three treaties that were signed in 1648, they came after a 30-year war in Germany with roughly a quarter of all Germans brutally murdered, the 80-year war between the Spanish kingdom and the Netherlands or the lowlands in the Austro-Hungarian construct. We're talking here about the Black Plague that also eradicated roughly a quarter of all Europe.
Don't forget the war in England between the Parliament and the Royalists. So we're talking 500,000 dead from that war.
Well, we're talking here about a lot of blood turning into the realization that nation states is the best formula to allow cultures to live in peace and security together, first and foremost, and then deal with bilateral relations, trilateral relations, multilateral relations, and such. We are drawing near to the end of the program, and obviously we discussed a lot of different aspects, but what it comes down to is that Israel requires unity to confront all of its challenges. And it's not only unity from within. It is also a unity with its allies and partners around the world. First and foremost with Israel's strategic partners, namely the United States of America, Germany. Those two countries are indispensable for the security of Israel. And I do add Germany because it has a lot of weight also to the security construct and much more. And there are also relations, of course, with Australia and Canada, which are now in all-time low, unfortunately, due to the governments in the respective countries. But all in all, when we look at the outlook for the state of Israel, I still want to remain optimistic. Do you share that?
Yes, providing that we make a choice to follow Jewish values, Judeo Christian values that we share with the Western world that we want to be a part of, and the directives of those understandings of the post-World War II decrees that these countries took upon themselves, as far as creating borders, as far as treating all under your jurisdiction as equals, or at least giving them the respect that is required so that small internal conflicts don't develop. These are all signs of the post-Second World War Europe, and the understandings of America and Europe of how countries should take care of business. And with Israel is not doing this according to those value systems.
But neither are the Europeans, and nor is the United States to a certain degree.
To a less degree.
Right.
And let's hope that the next Israeli leadership, that I think we can guess who they're going to be, but even if it's Netanyahu with different
coalition partners that are more aligned with the camp.
There is, we should inhibit ourselves in that when you win, be benevolent enough not to create animosity to a level that will create or force the other side to look for ways to hit you back and terrorize you. And that is a lesson that we need to learn. And I think it should be directed towards the West Bank of how we deal with the West Bank.
We have run out of time. So with that, General Relik Shafir, thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.